This was bound to happen, right? Tower of Fantasy has found some success globally since launching, and despite its issues with hacking, with exploits, it is still a relatively fun game. But with its success, I've noticed a growing number of players comparing other games like Arknight's Enfield and Wuthering Waves to it, which honestly leaves me wondering why people do this to themselves and the games that they want to play. We all know that Tower of Fantasy is different to Genshin Impact, and that Genshin Impact is I hope that we all know that Genshin Impact is different to Breath of the Wild. Both Arknight's Enfield and Wuthering Waves, along with many other upcoming open-world anime RPGs, will be different to Genshin and Tower of Fantasy, and neither game's success rides on how similar or dissimilar either game is. Before we go any further, I just want to take a moment here to thank all of the absolute chads and chadettes that support this channel via Patreon. You're all freaking legends. Seriously, each and every single one of you. I would offer to give each of you a kiss, but I suffer from severe intimacy issues. Additionally, if you want to stay up to date with all the latest MMO gacha and gaming news, take a second here to follow Mrs. Stix and I over on Twitter. We tweet daily. One thread in specific caught my attention over on Reddit, which has the OP asking what Wuthering Waves can do to make sure that it doesn't make the same mistakes that Tower of Fantasy has. And I found some of the replies to be kind of interesting. The top reply was made by someone with an actual brain for a change, who goes on to note that we should not be comparing an MMO to a non-MMO, something people continue to do every day with Genshin and Tower of Fantasy. The next highest rated comment is also fairly sensible. Don't be published by Perfect World. That's definitely a plus. Don't market it as an X killer. That's probably some of the best advice you can realistically be given. Us labeling each game as the X game killer ultimately leaves us open for disappointment and expectations that will just realistically never be met. Don't plagiarize assets and or the trailer. Well, Kudo Game are definitely pros at making their own, so that is definitely not an issue. And then the most interesting thing happened, something that I'm sure a lot of you wouldn't expect. People began fighting amongst one another. Genshin fans started posting comments about Tower of Fantasy. Tower of Fantasy fans started claiming that it's going to be one of the biggest success stories in years and one of the greatest gacha games ever released, and then the thread just imploded onto itself. What was a thread that was dedicated to what upcoming games could do different, what they could learn from the mistakes that Tower of Fantasy has made, instead became a cesspool of hate, of drama, pointing fingers, and copium. It doesn't matter whether you think Tower of Fantasy will be as successful, less successful, or more successful than Genshin Impact. If it dies, it dies. If it breaks records and succeeds, then good for it. But my god, people need to stop A, labeling everything as a goddamn clone of something else, B, labeling everything as the next game killer, and C, thinking their opinion is fact when it isn't. What Wuthering Waves can do to make sure it does not make the same mistakes is easy. Be original, imitation is one thing, blatant theft is another. Adequately market your game. If you don't, nobody will know about it, and release your game when you're ready. Otherwise, it'll be filled with bugs, exploits, hacks, and it will die off before it ever has a chance of succeeding. That is all they need to do to learn from Tower of Fantasy's mistakes. Now, while we wait for Wuthering Waves to release, here's a gacha game that I am anticipating more than any other this year after playing the global beta. And alternatively, here's a list of confirmed gacha games coming if neither of those look interesting to you.